Imagine this scenario. You've worked bloody hard your entire life. You've paid your taxes year after year. You've copped 12 consecutive interest rate hikes from the Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, on the chin, and through sheer grit and sacrifice, you managed to buy a second property. Maybe it's a modest little holiday shack down on the Mornington Peninsula or along the Great Ocean Road, a place for the kids and grandkids to make memories during the summer. Or maybe it's an investment property in the Melbourne suburbs that you bought to secure your retirement, because you know damn well the age pension isn't going to cut it. For the last few months, the house has been sitting empty. Maybe you're saving up some cash to do an urgent bathroom renovation. And maybe the long-term rental market has become so heavily regulated and so hostile towards landlords that you've decided to take a breather before putting a new renter in. Or maybe it's just your holiday home and you only use it during the warmer months. It's your property. You paid the exorbitant stamp duty when you bought it. You pay your council rates every single year. You pay your standard land tax. It's your brick, it's your block of dirt, and it's your rules. Or at least, that's what you thought. On a quiet Tuesday morning, an official brown envelope from the State Revenue Office, the SRO, lands in your letterbox. You tear it open, expecting the usual annual rates notice. But the figure at the bottom of the page makes your blood run cold. It's not $1,500. It's not $2,000. The state government is demanding a direct and short-term cash payment of $15,000. You call the SRO, your heart pounding, assuming there has been a massive clerical error in their system. The operator on the other end of the line, reading from a cold, pre-approved government script, quickly sets you straight. There is no mistake, mate. According to our data matching systems, your property has been unoccupied for more than 6 months of the calendar year. Therefore, you have been slapped with the Vacant Residential Land Tax. You have 21 days to pay this balance in full, or we will commence applying penalty interest and legal sanctions. You can barely breathe. $15,000 is more than you clear in 3 months of hard work. And then the operator delivers the final devastating blow. And just a reminder, if the house remains vacant next year, this tax will double to 2%. And in year 3, it triples to 3%. Have a good day. Welcome to the Great Australian Property Purge of 2025 and 2026. Before we dive into exactly how the state government is using unprecedented military-grade surveillance tech and smart utility meters to track exactly how many nights you sleep in your own bed, and before I explain how this fiscal trap is deliberately designed to force you to sell your family assets to corporate funds at rock-bottom prices, I need to ask you a massive favor. Please, take exactly 2 seconds right now to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It costs you absolutely nothing. It literally takes 2 seconds of your time, but it means the world to us. By subscribing, you are telling the YouTube algorithm to push this video out and help thousands of other hardworking mum and dad investors across the country who are about to lose their life savings because they don't know this new law exists. Your like could literally save an Aussie family from bankruptcy. Thank you so much for your support. Now, let's look at how the government has decided to raid your bank account. To understand the sheer brutality of this new tax, the infamous VRLT, Vacant Residential Land Tax, we first have to understand why this is happening, and the answer is simple: crippling debt. The state of Victoria is absolutely broke. It is the most heavily indebted state in the entire Commonwealth of Australia. After years of the world's longest lockdowns, massive big build infrastructure projects blowing out their budgets by tens of billions of dollars, and a bloated public sector payroll, the state government's debt has skyrocketed to catastrophic levels. Credit rating agencies have downgraded them. The government needs cold, hard cash, and they need it yesterday. But the politicians know they can't raise income tax. Albo and the federal government control that. They can't raise the GST. If they squeeze the big multinational corporations too hard, those companies will just pack up their headquarters and move across the border to Queensland or New South Wales. So who is the easiest target? Who is the one demographic that physically cannot pack up their assets and flee to another state? Exactly. The property owner. Your house cannot move. It is bolted to Victorian soil. Yeah, you are a captive cash cow. Under the noble disguise of solving the housing affordability crisis and freeing up homes for young families, the government introduced the VRLT. In the beginning, it was an easy pill for the public to swallow. This tax originally only applied to a handful of inner-city and middle-ring suburbs in Melbourne. The government spun a narrative that they were only going after wealthy foreign billionaires who were leaving luxury CBD penthouses empty and hoarding property. The general public cheered. They said, "Good on 'em, make the rich pay." But as is always the case with government taxation, once the Trojan horse is inside the city walls, the soldiers pour out and the slaughter begins. In a stealthy and devastating legislative move, the state government recently expanded the reach of the Vacant Residential Land Tax to cover the entire state of Victoria. It's no longer just inner-city Melbourne, it's Geelong, it's Ballarat, it's Bendigo, it's the coastal holiday towns. It applies to every single square inch of residential land in the state. And this is where the mathematics of this tax become absolutely ruinous. This is the dirtiest trick in the legislation. Standard land taxes and council rates are usually calculated on your site value, which is just the value of the dirt underneath your house. But the VRLT is a different breed of predator. It is calculated on the capital improved value, CIV. That means they are taxing you a percentage of the dirt plus the value of the actual house built on top of it. With inflated Aussie property prices, even an older, though unrenovated brick veneer house in a middle-class suburb can easily have a CIV of $1.5 million. Let's run the numbers so you can see the financial guillotine hanging over your neck. If your property has a CIV of $1.5 million and is deemed vacant, in year one, the SRO hits you with a 1% tax. That is $15,000 in cash that you must pay that year, on top of your normal land tax, your council rates, your home insurance, and your 6.5% mortgage interest. Can't get it tenanted in time or need longer to renovate? In year two, the rate doubles to 2%. You now owe the state $30,000. Still empty in year three? The maximum penalty triggers 3%. A bill for $45,000 lands in your letterbox. In just 3 years, the government has legally confiscated $90,000 of your wealth for the crime of owning a house and not using it exactly how the Premier dictates. There isn't a middle-class family in Australia that can sustain that kind of negative cash flow. You are being cornered. The government's message is loud and clear. You either put a tenant in that house under our incredibly strict new rental laws, or we will bleed you dry financially until you are forced to hammer a for sale board into your front lawn. And here is where the real trap of the VRLT lies, the 6-month rule. To avoid this destructive tax, the property cannot be vacant for more than 6 months in a calendar year, from January 1st to December 31st. And it doesn't have to be a continuous block of 6 months. It is cumulative. If you use your beach house for 3 weeks over the Christmas holidays, 2 weeks at Easter, and a couple of long weekends, you've been there for maybe a month and a half. The house has been empty for 10.5 months. Bam, 1% tax. You're in breach. You might be sitting there thinking, no worries, mate, I'll just tell the SRO my adult kid lives there rent-free while they study at uni. Be very, very careful. The law explicitly states that the property must be occupied by the owner as their principal place of residence, PPR, or it must be occupied by a tenant under a genuine, bona fide residential tenancy agreement, a proper lease, of at least 6 months. An informal cash-in-hand arrangement with a mate or a family member where they aren't paying market rent. The SRO will reject it. But the question that is terrifying property investor forums and Facebook community groups across Australia right now is this. How do they actually know? How does the State Revenue Office know how many nights you slept in your own investment property? Do they have government agents hiding in the bushes? The answer is much darker, much cheaper, and far more efficient. They don't need physical inspectors. They have built an algorithmic data trawling net, and you have nowhere to hide. We expose the brutal reality of the VRLT, the Vacant Residential Land Tax. We saw how a broke, debt-drowning state government has decided to legally confiscate 1%, 2%, or even 3% of your property's total capital improved value, CIV, if you leave it empty for more than 6 months. We are talking about $15,000, $30,000, or $45,000 tax bills designed to bleed mum and dad investors dry and force a mass sell-off. But the burning question that is currently melting down property chat forums from Melbourne to Sydney is this. How do they actually know? How does a bureaucrat sitting at a desk in the State Revenue Office, SRO, know exactly how many nights you slept in your own investment property? Do they have undercover agents parked outside your holiday shack with a notepad? If you think this relies on old-school council inspectors knocking on your front door, you are gravely underestimating the government. Welcome to the era of algorithmic surveillance and data matching. They don't need to send a human to your house because you have already installed the spies for them. Let's talk about your smart meters. For years, state governments pushed, mandated, and incentivized us to install smart electricity and water meters under the guise of energy efficiency and accurate billing. What they didn't tell you is that these devices would become the primary witnesses for the prosecution against you. Under the VRLT legislation, the Commissioner of State Revenue has sweeping, terrifying powers to demand bulk data from third parties. The SRO has established direct data sharing agreements with the major utility providers, companies like Yarra Valley Water, Southeast Water, Origin Energy, and AGL. The SRO's algorithm silently scans millions of billing records every single month. It is hunting for zero occupancy footprints. Think about it logically. A normal family or a regular tenant uses a highly predictable amount of water. They shower every morning, they flush the toilet, they run the washing machine, they do the dishes. The smart meter registers those daily spikes. But if your investment property is sitting empty, the water usage drops to absolute zero for weeks on end. If the algorithm detects that a 4-bedroom house has used exactly 0 litres of water in the last 90 days, a massive red light flashes at the SRO headquarters. The computer then cross-references your property address with the principal place of residence database, and crucially with the Residential Tenancies Bond Authority, RTBA. Is it the owner's primary residence? No. Is there an active rental bond lodged for a tenant? No. Is there any water being used? No. Bam. The automated system flags you as a high-risk vacant property and prints your $15,000 tax assessment. Yup, you have been caught without a single government employee ever driving down your street. And here is where the clever investors make a fatal mistake that could cost them their freedom. You might be sitting there thinking, no worries, mate. I'll just go down to Bunnings, buy a couple of $15 RLEC plug-in timers. I'll set the lounge room lamp and a radio to turn on from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. every night. I'll trick the system. Do not do it. It is a financial death trap. Modern smart electricity meters don't just measure how much power you use, they measure your load profile. The government's I knows the exact difference between the low, constant mechanical draw of a light timer and the chaotic energy signature of a real human being. A real person creates a massive random spike at 6:30 p.m. when they turn on the oven. Crank up the split system aircon and flick the kettle on, all at the same time. Trying to trick a smart meter with a lamp timer is like trying to trick a lie detector by blinking fast. It does not work. And if the SRO suspects you are actively trying to evade the VRLT, things escalate from a civil tax matter to a criminal disaster. Every year you are required to make a declaration to the SRO about your property's occupancy status. If you lie on that statutory declaration, claiming the house was occupied when your water data proves the taps were bone dry for 8 months, you are no longer just facing a 1% tax bill. You are facing charges for tax evasion, perjury, and massive criminal fines. They will use your utility bills, your Australia Post redirection records, and even your ATO tax returns to crush you in a tribunal. Yeah, but what about the traditional Aussie holiday home? The beach shack? The government, trying to sound reasonable on the nightly news, introduced a holiday home exemption. The politicians stood at the podium and said, "Don't worry, if you have a little shack down the coast and you use it for your family holidays, you are exempt from the VRLT. It is smoke and mirrors." It is one of the hardest exemptions to actually secure in Australian tax law. To qualify for the holiday home exemption, it is not enough to just say you go down there on weekends. You must meet brutal criteria. The owner, or an immediate family member, must use the property as a holiday home for at least 4 weeks in the calendar year. The owner must have a genuine principal place of residence, PPR, in Australia. If you are an Aussie expat working in London or Dubai, or a foreign investor, you are not entitled to this exemption. You are trapped. The Commissioner must be satisfied that it is a genuine holiday home. And what does satisfied mean? It means if you get audited, the burden of proof is entirely on you. You are guilty until proven innocent. You will have to provide receipts from the local IGA supermarket in the coastal town. You will have to provide your CityLink e-tag toll data proving you actually drove down the freeway on those dates. You will have to show utility spikes corresponding exactly to the days you claim to be there. You are forced to justify every single minute you spend in a property that you bought with your own post-tax money. They are turning mum and dad property investors into criminals in the eyes of the tax system. The ultimate goal of this surveillance isn't just to raise a bit of extra revenue. The ultimate goal is soft expropriation. They want the financial pain of holding that property, the extreme stress of SRO audits, and the suffocation of paying a 1% to 3% wealth tax every year to completely break you. They want you to call the real estate agent, put the house on the market, and sell it. And when thousands of terrified investors do the exact same thing at the exact same time, property prices will crash in those areas, wiping out the wealth of the Australian middle class. But you do not have to be a victim of this predatory system. There are legal shields, little-known exemptions, and entirely legitimate strategies that top-tier property investors are using right now to insulate their portfolios from the VRLT and leave the SRO empty-handed. Here is your investor survival guide for 2026. Strategy 1. The workplace exemption. If you live in regional Victoria, let's say Bendigo or Ballarat, but you own a city apartment in Melbourne that you sleep in when you travel for business, you can claim the workplace exemption. The property must be occupied by you for at least 140 days of the year for the purpose of attending your workplace. But remember the audit rule. Keep a meticulous logbook. Keep your train tickets, your parking receipts, and a letter from your employer. If you can prove those 140 days, the SRO cannot touch you. Strategy 2. The renovation loophole. The government cannot tax a house for being empty if it is legally uninhabitable or undergoing major construction. If you bought a rundown investment property and it's sitting empty, do not just leave it there. Commence a genuine renovation. However, painting the walls doesn't count. To trigger the exemption, the property must be undergoing construction or major renovations that require a building permit from the local council. Once that permit is issued and work genuinely commences, the property is exempt from the VRLT for up to 2 years. Use this grace period to upgrade the property and increase its value while paying exactly 0 VRLT. Strategy 3. The 6-month lease strategy. The government wants you to lock tenants in for 12 months or more, so they can trap you with the new, incredibly restrictive rental laws that make it almost impossible to evict a bad tenant. But look closely at the VRLT legislation. It only requires the property to be occupied for 6 months of the calendar year to avoid the tax. If you are thinking of selling, or you are terrified of long-term tenants, bite the bullet and offer a strict fixed-term 6-month lease. Yes, the tenant turnover is annoying. Yes, you have to pay the property manager a letting fee. But paying a $1,000 letting fee to a real estate agent is infinitely better than paying a $15,000 VRLT bill to the government. You satisfy the 6-month rule, the SRO leaves you alone, and at the end of the 6 months, you have a vacant property that you can either use yourself, renovate, or put on the market to sell without a tenant getting in the way. Conclusion: draw the line in the sand. The Vacant Residential Land Tax is not about housing affordability. It is a desperate wealth grab by a failing state government that cannot manage its own budget. They are trying to make the cost of holding onto your hard-earned assets so incredibly high that you surrender them. It is a cynical, cruel machine. But it only works if you panic and comply. The era of the passive Australian property investor is dead. You must become a professional defender of your own wealth. Keep meticulous records. Understand the exemptions. Put a 6-month tenant in if you have to. Make it absolutely impossible for them to legally classify your property as a taxable liability. I want to hear your story. Are you an Aussie investor terrified of the new VRLT rules? Have you already received a letter from the State Revenue Office demanding thousands of dollars? Or have you decided to sell up and invest your money in another state like WA or Queensland just to escape the taxes? Get down in the comments below and let me know. The debate is raging, and we need to expose exactly what this government is doing to everyday Australians. If this video gave you the tools to fight back, protect your portfolio, and save yourself thousands of dollars, please take exactly 2 seconds to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It costs you absolutely nothing, but it pushes this video out to the thousands of other Aussie investors who are currently sitting in the dark, completely unaware of the massive tax bill heading for their letterbox. Stay strong, know your rights, and don't let the government steal your wealth. I'll see you in the next one.